legacy of his own, later parlaying his in-ring success and popularity to the world.
Look at that! Holy shit! This man is perpetually cosplaying the Crimson Chin. Holy shit! That's like that meme, the Chad Thundercock gamer meme or whatever.
I'm Kento Bento. This video is made possible by Dashlane. Download Dashlane for a free 30-day
Don't know who that is,
trial
though.
if you never want to forget another password again at the link in the description. Pyongyang, North Korea, 1995. The lone American made his way down a long, dingy hallway.
Stone Cold Steve Austin, let's go!
Korean officials. He was nervous, afraid of what was to come. Not just because of the constant surveillance he was under, but the state of the entire country. You see, North Korea at that very moment was in the midst of a devastating famine, with hundreds and thousands of its citizens suffering and dying from starvation and illnesses. He didn't know what to expect, but he was there for
Jojo,
and he had a job to do. At the entrance, he got his cue, and with one final breath,
I disagree,
he
King.
stepped out into what was a sea of humanity.
Oh,
now this wasn't just any crowd. This was 190,000 North Koreans.
Holy
who conditioned to see
shit.
Americans as evil, who did not know pro wrestling was staged, that it was predetermined and choreographed. And here was a man,
190K,
who embodied everything they were legitimately told to hate. This man, you may have heard,
Ric Flair!
was the legendary Ric Flair.
Nature Boy, woo!
American professional wrestlers of all time. And at this moment, he was wondering what he had gotten himself into.
This guy's been like 90 years old for the last 80 years.
Led to this actually started 11 months earlier. Tokyo, Japan, 1994. Over 1,000 kilometers away, a Japanese politician was in his office.
Thanks a bit to that guy.
His uncertain
Can't click
future.
links, skin
This
far.
politician
And I
was in
can't
the
watch
midst of a
dildo
major
on
scandal
Twitch.
involving his alleged connection to the Japanese mafia, the Yakuza, and this seriously threatened his upcoming re-election to the House of Councilors, Japan's equivalent to the US Senate. Now, aside from being a politician, he was also one of the most popular Japanese wrestlers of all time. Because this
Wow.
with the granite chin was the renowned Antonio Inoki. Initially rising to fame
His
as the
chin is
great
nuts.
1950s legend Riki Dozan, the first real megastar of Japanese pro wrestling, he eventually branched out, building a legacy of his own, later parlaying his in-ring success and popularity to the world.
Look at that! Holy shit! This man is perpetually cosplaying the Crimson Chin. Holy shit! That's like that meme, the Chad Thundercock gamer meme or whatever. Holy lord.
However, with his political career now in limbo, he was thinking of leveraging that past to save his future. Now over in the Hermit Kingdom, an incident was taking place. Something unthinkable. The great leader, the eternal president, the founder of North Korea, Kim Il-sung, had collapsed. He was having a heart attack. A team of North Korea's best doctors were flown in to save him. They worked on him for hours, but alas, on the afternoon of July 8th, 1994, Kim Il-sung died. To North Koreans, this was a man who saved Korea, who single-handedly defeated the evil Japanese to liberate the nation, who fought off and vanquished the imperialist Americans to win the Korean War. Those were some mighty shoes to fill. His son, Kim Jong-il, now left suddenly with an entire nation to rule and one under immense turmoil, felt this pressure, as all eyes were on him. Meanwhile, in the US, there was one company that was reigning supreme as the world's premier wrestling brand, the Connecticut-based World Wrestling Federation, or
the WWF!
today,
Fuck!
WWE.
They used to make so many good Nintendo games.
Was the Georgia-based World Championship Wrestling, or WCW, who was constantly trying to catch up. This frustrated the WCW president Eric Bischoff, who wanted nothing more than to beat his rival. One night, Bischoff received a call from an old Japanese acquaintance. It was the wrestler-turned-politician Antonio Inoki. Inoki had finally figured out how to save
Thanks to Prime, Crosslaw, and Resub Haley, and Jaws.
Involved holding the greatest pro wrestling event the world had ever seen. Inoki himself owned a successful wrestling company in Tokyo called New Japan Pro Wrestling, NJPW, and in a collaborative effort,
I don't know too much about that.
WCW wanted to put on a pay-per-view extravaganza with marquee names from both sides of the Pacific. The publicity would be huge. Bischoff listened intently as
WCW had Hulk Hogan first, I think, right?
the event would be held
Is Hulkmania gonna run wild in North Korea?
totalitarian, isolationist state. Now, this in itself would be controversial, but NJPW was a Japanese company, and WCW was an American company. Two countries considered the greatest of enemies to North Korea.
He went to WCW after.
Inoki
Gotcha.
was willing, hoping the publicity and goodwill gleaned from this so-called World Peace event, as he dubbed it, would boost his chances at re-election, as well as help put WCW on the map. Or at least, that was his pitch to Bischoff. Bischoff didn't actually need much convincing though, because he saw this as a phenomenal opportunity to gain mainstream attention. Now, of course, all this really amounts to nothing if North Korea didn't actually agree to hold the event. And for such an isolationist country intent on keeping outsiders away, this just wasn't going to happen, barring of course,
why did they agree to it? Did they revive their supreme leader and have him win the wrestling match?
Was now
proving that he was the best?
He needed to make a statement. He needed to showcase his newfound power and influence to the world and to his own people. He needed to prove his worth and establish a cult of personality he felt was vital for political control, something he learned from Dad. And, odd as it may seem to us, a grand pro wrestling event with its simplistic portrayals of good and evil.
I hope he hops in the ring.
Served that purpose. North Korea had always tended towards
these prime goose and Resub Medieval
spectacles in showcasing their might. And so,
yeah, I heard about that body farm.
Thus the pieces were now in place. Inoki, Bischoff, and Kim were all in. But they needed a main event to headline the show, one that would generate a great deal of buzz. And it only made sense that Inoki himself be involved, given his
what a badass,
which he agreed to. Being
and that chin is nuts.
Sport by that point, and being an active, high-profile politician made it unexpected to some, though not completely unique in the annals of
Kane,
as seen by current mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, Kane, who still makes in-ring appearances to this day. Inoki had always taken a shot.
Kane's so fucking cool. Oh, what?
Diplomatic affairs. And controversies aside, his actions
he slap a school child?
A genuine interest in promoting world peace, to the point of putting himself in some real danger. Now, the question was though, who was he going to face in the main event? His opponent also had to be big and preferably American, and so Eric Bischoff went and asked his biggest star in WCW to join him in Pyongyang, the most famous wrestler of all time.
I fucking knew it.
Hogan, who said no.
Oh.
But who did agree to join him was the Nature Boy.
Woo! Let's go, Ric Flair!
The all-time greats. Unlike Hogan, Party Boy Flair was always up for an adventure and was excited to take the risk.
I don't think this guy has been off of cocaine for more than a day.
No one would be
any time in the last 3 decades.
Now, at this point, the powers that be wanted even more prestige added to the event.
Thanks for 5 gift subs, Ferry.
That even non-wrestling fans had heard of. Astonishingly, Bischoff was able to convince Muhammad Ali the Greatest to join them on the ride. Many months later, in Pyongyang, this motley crew of high-profile American and Japanese wrestlers and performers touched down in a special military plane sent by the North Korean government. They were warned in advance the plane would be bugged, filled with microphones, which meant they had to refrain from saying anything even remotely negative about the country. Upon landing, each person had their passports taken and was immediately assigned a handler by North Korea's intelligence agency to follow them around 24/7. This meant they weren't allowed to go anywhere, except for on carefully curated tours of the country, crafted
What's Ric Flair's finishing move? I don't know.
On these tours, they had to go to
fucking Force of Nature or something, where he just like rips your cock off?
The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki never happened, and that North Korea won World War II. Many times, they had to pay their respects to the great heroes of North Korea's past, including
the fucking Figure 4
deceased supreme leader.
I don't remember that.
They were simply the best, and if anyone told them otherwise, there would be severe consequences. One of the wrestlers, Big Scott Norton, found this out the hard way. One night in his hotel room, he was on the phone with his wife, who was in the US. They were arguing, as she was accusing him of partying recklessly, having a blast with the guys over in Asia. Norton tried to explain that she was wrong, that that sort of thing just wasn't possible in North Korea.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
Out of frustration, he yelled, "You don't understand what kind of shit we're in." Which is when he went dead.
He died.
The door suddenly opened.
Oh my God.
North Korean military personnel
executed him
and forced him out. They sat him down in an interrogation room and informed him that he can't talk about their country like that. Indeed, they had heard everything. The phone was tapped and the room was bugged. All the hotel rooms were under surveillance. According to his later account, Norton fully expected to be shot right then, right there. But as things were looking dire, someone high up in command walked in, and after some vague threats and a stern warning, he was let go. Perhaps it was because they knew a high-profile diplomatic incident would likely be more detrimental to North Korea. Or they just didn't want to ruin the big event the next day, as Scott Norton was a featured attraction.
Does he still go on to wrestle?
Norton Flair, all the wrestlers were ready to put on a show.
They beat him with metal bats and then expect him to go wrestle?
Really had no idea what sort of crowd to expect. Would they even be able to afford tickets? But upon arrival at the stadium, they were shocked to find a packed attendance, which in itself is impressive. But this was North Korea's May Day Stadium, to this day the largest stadium in the world. Ric Flair was ecstatic that there were real draws even in the Hermit Kingdom, but he was soon informed that what he was witnessing was a forced attendance.
Who cares?
To show the world how much they were truly respected, and it was clear that empty arena matches just wouldn't convey that. As for their militaristic might, they had tanks and launchers displayed on the field, as well as lots and lots and lots of marching. In the back, they had rows of children holding up sectioned cards that collectively depicted ballistic missiles hitting the US and Japan, which, while a magnificent sight to behold, was awkwardly worrisome for the American and Japanese.
No, they mean it in good faith. Part of the wrestling promotion.
Once the actual wrestling started, things took a strange turn, because it became quickly apparent that something wasn't quite right. The entire stadium of people were silent. Eerily silent. Pro wrestling had always been contingent on eliciting crowd reactions and playing off them, so this was a huge detriment to the performance. Now, it turned out that likely no one in the stadium actually knew what pro wrestling was.
So what?
They didn't know any of the famous wrestlers, and they didn't know it was meant to be fake. For this conservative crowd, the carnivalesque glitz and glamour, the flamboyance and face paint was just too much. And, if anything, they were expecting competition along the lines of amateur wrestling, or Greco-Roman, the best fighting the best, true gladiators, the elite, not this suspiciously fake stuff. But that wasn't even the biggest problem, because the entire show was filled with American and Japanese wrestlers. All the matches were either America versus America, Japan versus Japan, or America versus Japan. So who are they supposed to cheer? Wrestling's meant to have a good guy, bad guy dynamic, and they clearly established at the start who not to cheer for. The deafening silence continued through Too Cold Scorpio's breakdancing, the Steiner brothers' theatrics, and even some solid wrestling. There were a few exceptions though that provoked a reaction, like the women's tag match, which was absolutely shocking for the North Korean men, Bull Nakano in particular with the blue-haired dominatrix look, and the match of behemoths. Big Scott Norton, fresh from interrogation, battling Shinya Hashimoto. Big heavy-set men like these were of course bewildering sights in a country ravaged by famine. Exceptions aside though, by and large, there were no reactions.
This is fucking wild.
Didn't care. And as the main event rolled around, things were looking grim. Ric Flair versus Antonio Inoki. Once again, America versus Japan. Now Flair may have been on edge, but Inoki,
they should have used necromancy and brought back the supreme leader. Have him wrestle.
In fact, he had anticipated the crowd from the very start. And as the architect of this whole affair, he was banking on one very important piece of the puzzle. One that was remarkably over 70 years in the making. Hongwon County, North Korea, 1924. On the East Coast, there was a boy who was the son of a farmer. He grew up poor like many in the region, but once older, he was able to make his way to Japan to earn a living. Korea was still under colonial Japanese rule at the time. He first did sumo, but soon gave it up to try his hand at professional wrestling. This is where he found unrivaled success, defeating American after American, emerging as a folk hero to the Japanese people. In the post-war era, the Japanese people were searching for that one symbol of strength, a symbol of Japanese resurgence, and they found it in this man, the man known as Rikidozan, the first real megastar of Japanese pro wrestling. By this point, he was a naturalized Japanese, but he still loved his homeland and its people, if not the regime running it. Then in 1963, after an altercation at a nightclub, to the shock of the nation, he unexpectedly died. Now, it was at this point North Korea decided to use him, an ethnic North Korean, for propaganda purposes, transferring his legacy to fit the North Korean narrative, defeating American after American on behalf of the Kim regime, even if no one in the country knew what pro wrestling was. Today, he stands as the nation's ultimate anti-imperialist patriot, and, just like the Kims, is a revered national hero, heavily featured in North Korean media, propaganda posters, monuments, with people all over the country traveling to pay their respects. Which is why 30-odd years after his death, it was a monumental occasion when Rikidozan's protege, Antonio Inoki, on behalf of his mentor, returned to the homeland to once again conquer and defeat an imperialist American scoundrel. As Flair made his way to the ring, looking as American as can be, with his blonde hair, blue eyes, and star-studded robe, he was nervous. The crowd was treating him with a sense of quiet disdain.
Hitting me with tomatoes.
But then it was
well, I mean, it's North Korea. They don't have tomatoes. Spitting at him, I guess.
And for the first time, the crowd came alive. It didn't matter that he was Japanese, because he was representing the great Rikidozan. As the match started, it became very clear that this wasn't America versus Japan. This was America versus North Korea.
Thanks, Risam Sokoloko.
A few times at Collision in Korea, really responding to Inoki.
The people truly loved Inoki, chanting his name and hanging on his every move. Flair too played his part well with his classic cowardly antics. And after about 15 minutes of back and forth action, Inoki nailed a cartwheel, a devastating top rope knee drop.
Oh god, Nature Boy's getting fucked up.
And Zaguri kick. And it was over. The hero had triumphed. Fans stood up and applauded as North Korea once again prevailed. The main event was a success. Kim was happy, and with the entire event in Pyongyang having a legitimate record-breaking attendance far greater than any WrestleMania to date, this was proclaimed undoubtedly the greatest pro wrestling event in history. Or was it? That was the North Korean narrative. But outside of the Hermit,
no one watched it.
The event actually failed to garner any real publicity. No one knew about it, and the few who did reported it as some strange attempt to win world respect, reinforcing international opinion that North Korea was kind of weird. Kim Jong-il did not get the respect he was seeking, but it wasn't just him. After returning to Japan, Antonio Inoki discovered that the event offered little to no political rub amidst its controversies, and a few months later, he lost his re-election to Japan's House of Councilors. For Eric Bischoff, he decided to air the controversial event on pay-per-view, marketing it as Collision in Korea, which hopefully was the big push he needed to once and for all topple the WWF. But it tanked. The ratings were low, and no one cared. There wasn't even any blowback for their time in Korea. Years later, WCW was purchased by the WWF, by this point, the WWE, and the event soon faded into obscurity. Now, interestingly, this wasn't actually the last time a major US wrestling company would go on to hold a prominent event in a controversial totalitarian state. Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, 2018. 23 years
I remember this.
Korea.
The wrestlers got
now
trapped.
Unrivaled as the world's largest wrestling
They weren't allowed to leave.
held an event in the kingdom's capital. This amidst controversy involving the journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who after being surveilled for weeks by Saudi officials, was executed in the Saudi consulate in Turkey. According to many sources, the order came from the Crown Prince himself, although Saudi Arabia denies this. The show went on despite criticisms from prominent politicians, the media, political commentators, and even WWE's top stars, like Daniel Bryan and John Cena, who refused to work the event. All this quite unlike North Korea, where no one cared. However, just like North Korea, the Saudi show inextricably featured a wrestler turned politician
Gamers
who,
Nexus?
like Inoki, just so happened to compete in the night's main event.
Holy shit, thank you, Jester.
This
Nexus.
Man, the aforementioned mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, Kane. Now, the funny thing is, while North Korea was spying on wrestlers, Saudi Arabia was spying on journalists, tapping their phones and hacking their accounts, which makes it all the more fitting that the only reason they were caught and exposed was because Turkey was spying on them. And really, it's not just governments or journalists or wrestlers. Most people today are too lax when it comes to online security, using the same password for every account they have. Now, if this is you, congratulations. You've just witnessed my most convoluted seg. But that's okay, because that's
it's a good segue. The one he's talking about, though, I actually do remember that one. I'd never heard about the North Korean one, though. Cookie Monster, Elmo getting Times Square trouble, sure.
A mere $17.
It's easy to say, oh yeah, these guys make $300 a day. Yeah, on that one day, and then the next time you saw them, they were begging for lunch money, which is what I'm doing now. I'm currently trying to earn money to pay back the money I borrowed for lunch.
As the numerous Elmos and Cookie Monsters walk the streets fighting for the same tips, things can and do get ugly. Recently, a man dressed as Cookie Monster allegedly pushed a 2-year-old after his parents didn't tip. A man dressed as Super Mario was charged with roping a woman back in December, while the man in this video, dressed as Elmo, was busted last summer for shouting anti-slurs.
What the fuck?
Don't use Michael Milken's International Leapfrog! Don't use Michael Milken's International
Some of the cosplay characters are a little too aggressive. It's just how it is. These guys can't see anything, especially when it's in the shade, and especially when there's a big crowd on top of them.
There's the resub.
Visibility out of here is like this. I mean, I literally cannot see anything. And that's what the accusations all are.
Yeah, I've watched the online stuff.
Spider-Man punched me, so-and-so pushed down my kid. I'm sorry, I just don't believe that.
And those New Yorkers who stopped to pose agree. The bad behavior may just be isolated incidents and welcome the huggable attraction.
That's pretty fucking wild. I usually like to watch the mascot fights. I remember we watched, who was it? Was it Elmo? No, it was Spider-Man fighting in Times Square. Spider-Man fucking threw down. Okay, I'm too interested by the story. Yeah, I'm gonna check it out. I'm sure they don't show anything.
An entire family gunned down in cold blood and a sinister plot to take the lives of at least 70 more.
What?
On today's episode of Morbid Reality, we document the rise and fall of Trey Sessler. Trey Eric Sessler was born on August 8, 1989 to a loving family comprised of his mother Rhonda, father Lawton Ray, and a single older brother named Mark, led to the eventual creation of his YouTube channel Lenscap Productions in September of 2006.
That sounds familiar.
There,
Lenscap
Trey posted numerous. Over the next 5 years,
this was a big gun guy?
Review, discussing everything he knew and loved about anime, while also occasionally uploading gun-themed skits and even a few weapons demonstration videos.
This does not look like the kind of guy that would be obsessed with guns. Not even wearing a ball cap, no pickup truck.
Gun violence.
Yes, I'm ranting on something a little bit anime unrelated. I'm ranting on all the shootings that have
Oh boo, no anime, no interest.
Myself, but
on May 13th of 2012, Trey uploaded a video titled Mr. Anime's New Job.
Okay.
In it, he details how he just found full-time employment for an unnamed production company, thanks to
this channel still up? Because I can't imagine it had these dislikes back then. He
assured his audience that while uploads may be slowing down, that the channel was in great health and that he had no plans of quitting YouTube anytime soon. This, unbeknownst to Trey and his fans alike, would be the last time he was seen on camera as a free man. YouTube's anime community.
That's gotta be tough.
If you haven't heard, Trey Sessler, aka Mr. Anime, has been arrested for suspicion of, well, he's been arrested and charged with murdering and shooting and murdering his mother, his father, and
that's gotta be tough, man.
It turns out that in the
I'm sure they weren't like super close if he uploaded a video talking about it, right?
Sessler had snapped. From inside the house, Trey's brother Mark began to call out, complaining about the noise. It's then when Trey swiftly made his way back into the home, passing his brother in the hallway before re-emerging from his room with a different gun and delivering 2 shots. Mark, although wounded, managed to crawl into the nearby bathroom and to lock the door as Trey began to make his way to their parents' bedroom.
Oh, pretty bad time for a raid, Atrioc. This is a fucked up story.
After shooting his father twice, Trey decided to retrace his steps, later admitting to
maybe we switch for a minute. Yeah, this story's kind of like actually fucked up. Unfortunate timing. We were learning about an anime reviewer turned murderer. Probably a far cry from what you were just experiencing. Yeah, this shit is heavy. We're all big boys and girls here. We can learn a little.
At least that he wanted to ensure. Shortly after the killings, Trey continued his rampage and scribbling apology letters on the walls and doors. One of which read, "Why did I do this? I love my mom, dad, and brother." Police were later sent over to the Sessler residence by concerned.
Did the monster with 21 faces use him like a fleshlight or something?
Trey, however, was nowhere to be found. Later that day, Trey was finally located and arrested. According to Trey himself, he'd been plotting a mass murder, claiming that he had plans to open fire on his old high school campus, possibly during a homecoming event. Trey began to explain to officers that he had thought about these plans in great detail, and even studied the crimes of past mass murders to piece together his own perfect plan on effectiveness,
this guy made a tier list for it?
And the total number of victims killed. Trey noted that his family had to be killed. That way, they wouldn't have the burden of shame brought about by his actions. Just a few hours after killing his family, Trey found himself in the parking lot of nearby Wallace Junior High School, armed with an assault rifle and hundreds of rounds. Before the killings, Trey said, "If I would have woken up that day and you would have come to me and asked, 'Are you going to kill your family tonight?' I would have definitely said no." So far, no real motive has been established, and Trey has since pleaded guilty to his crimes and is currently serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole.
And the possibility of anime.
How he'll never be able to forgive himself for his actions, and how he feels as though he deserves to be behind bars.
Mr. Anime. I don't know if I ever watched that shit. I used to be big into watching anime reviews, like back in I don't know. I mean, I still watch anime reviews, but I used to watch a fucking ton of them back in 2012, 2013. I don't know if I ever watched his shit, though. Yeah, that was fucking nuts, man. Yeah, I'm assuming his channel's still up, judging by the likes and dislike ratios that she was showcasing. I imagine that the channel wasn't taken down, but I still don't want to look at it. Yeah, it was a far cry from the Glico Morinaga incident, which was mainly just like an actual goofy anime episode. Well, I keep saying that, and that's pretty disrespectful considering the lead detective lit himself on fire, but everything up until that point was just kind of goofy. Oh, I've seen this. Holy shit.
Jones Barbecue and Foot Massage. Jones Barbecue and Foot Massage.
I forgot about this.
Get some of this shit. You like to eat. America loves to eat. So why not open up
Jelly
somewhere
and Stefano
sit down,
and
enjoy a meal, and get the feet rubbed. We'll fry anything you want for $5.99. As long as it's friable or edible, we're going to make it deliciable. We will fry parts of the chicken you don't eat
some toasty.
The beak, the feathers, we'll fry candy bars. All that European stuff that you don't really normally eat, we'll bring it down here and fry it for you. Ask McDonald's to fry something other than what they normally fry. Guess what you're going to get? Nothing. If it fit through the dough, I'll put it in the fryer. Hell, this is a dinosaur. All our meats are gently tenderized to their optimum deliciousness. We got fine dinosaur meats. Took my money, made me pay child support. Come on down here and get you a slice. Once they get your
Why did he stop making these?
Motivated. So friends, let's just decide you don't want no barbecue. Well,
no, let's not even pretend.
Let one of my foot specialists or myself perform our magic. Look at that. Don't they look wonderful? If you really pay me enough, we'll massage your feet in any of these sauces also. Success.
What a deal.
Down here, Jones, good ass barbecue and foot massage. So go ahead and give me a call or find us on the worldwide internets at the new website. That's JONES big ass truck rental and storage.com/
Is the site still up?
Good ass barbecue and foot massage.
I remember back in the day the site was up.
Excuse me, did you call number 52?
Did you hear me call number 52?